In this second video on how to checkmate with a king and rook against a king, we're going to see a checkmate that was developed by computer analysis. Remember that in the first part of king and rook checkmate, Reuben Fine said from this position it would take 16 moves to checkmate the black king, but in fact it only takes 15 moves. This checkmate features, rather than the king, you may remember from part 1 how the white king did a lot of maneuvering to trap the black king on the edge of the board and then drive the king to the corner. The rook was used more or less as a helper. In this checkmate, the roles will be reversed. The rook's going to do more of the maneuvering, and the white king, will act as the helper. So let's begin. Same first move, king to b2. But now the rook comes out and erects a barrier on the e-file, so effectively cutting off half the board. This using the rook to cut off large chunks of real estate is one of the big features of this checkmate. The king still strives to stay in the center of the board. And here the king maneuvers to get the white king maneuvers to get the black king out of the center. And now, this kind of position where we have the king standing in opposition, you remember from the previous video, the move that Reuben Fine might have suggested here is rook to e5 check, cutting off this row. The computer says rather to move to rook to d1. And I believe the reason for this, that this works, is because the rook can still, moving rook to d1, can still cut off this fifth rank on the next move, which is exactly what happens here. Now the black king moves back and attacks the white rook. Rather than retreating the rook, the white king advances. And now we see again that same pattern where the king moves off from the opposition and the white rook checks. Now here's an interesting position. The white rook begins to simply chop off files and gets to this position that we saw in the other corner of the board with the other checkmate, where the king is confined to the two corner squares. And from there we know how the checkmate goes. It's pretty simple. Let's go back and take a look at a variation that might occur in this checkmate. And we'll go back to the beginning and step through the first 7 moves. And here the rook moves to d5 check. Now, as you recall, last time we had the black king moving to c6. Let's imagine that the black king moves instead to b6. How would white respond? White probably could respond either by moving the king to b4 or to c4. If the king moves to b4, this king might move over here to attack the white rook, and the white rook simply retreats. A waiting move. The king is going to have to move either toward this edge of the board by moving back to c7 or b7, or he's going to have to move back toward the left edge of the board, the a file, by moving to b6. If he moves to b6, the rook comes back up and cuts off that 6th rank, and we're back to a position that we have already seen here. And if the king moves over to b7, the rook just chops off the file, as we saw in the previous variation. If the king moves back to any of these back to the c8 or b8, he's going to end up having the rook cut off that file, or more likely, if he moves, say, to c8, the white king moves to b6. The king has only one move, and that's checkmate there. For more great videos on chess strategies, go to www.chessstrategiesblog.com.